Hey.
Sensei. You are probably the most qualified language teacher I've had the pleasure of talking with. I have like a 30-year experience teaching.
Yeah, must be now. Nearly 29.
29. 3,000 lessons on italki alone.
Yeah.
I used to be a language teacher myself, so I wanted to ask you, what is the role of the language teacher, in your opinion?
The role of a language teacher. Well, mainly to help the students along, I'd say. Kind of facilitate, the learning.
Mm-hmm. I don't know whether you would agree with me, but in my experience, I found out that the role of the teacher is to teach the student how to learn alone. Basically, put us out of business.
Well, yeah. Yeah, it's true. The best students kind of go away and do it themselves. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's giving them the tools to do that, basically.
What about the age-old question, why aren't Japanese people good at English?
Why aren't?
I don't know. You think that they're good? I mean, they're not terrible, but considering the money they spend...
Yeah.
That's my point. They're not bad, but considering the money they spend annually, they're not doing too good.
Well, it's a pretty complicated answer.
Is it?
I mean, one thing is that it's not a simple case of applying $300 million to improving the English of Japanese people. I mean, that's not what that money is being used for. It's hard to say most, but many cases, it's just a hobby. Mm-hmm. They just want to mix with foreigners because they're cool. They just want to, let off some steam after work. I mean, there's a variety of reasons why, as you know, Japanese people want to mix with foreigners. And, English is kind of cool, so lots of people work hard. So they haven't really got time. I mean, this is another factor of why they're not as good as perhaps you'd expect. Well, it's in my mind, two reasons. One is they don't really need it in many cases. So
when you say need, what do you mean by need?
They don't need it to live. They're not in the target language environment. So they're not going to the shops. They're not trying to do everyday life. That type of thing makes you acquire the basics.
What about the Dutch or the Swedes or the Finns? Why are they good at English? Same thing applies to them. They don't need it. They don't go shopping in English. They don't speak English.
Yeah, I mean, in that case, it's the cultural difference. I mean, that was another thing. For the Japanese, they've got this isolation kind of idea going on. But for the Dutch, the Swedes, the Finns, they're part of a collective which expects, perhaps, or just has the tradition of acquiring more languages. In the case of English also, particularly for the Dutch, I'm a bit more familiar with than the others. Oh, well, Swedes I know a bit as well. Finns I don't know so much.
They usually rank in the top 10.
Yeah, I know. I know, yeah. I just mean personally, I don't know
sure.
many Finns. But when I've spoken to Swedes and Dutch, one thing they have said is that they can access the BBC. I mean, it's different. This is...
So can Japanese. Yeah, true. Yeah, now with internet in the pocket. Yeah.
30 years ago. Yeah. But like on TV, so they could just, or the radio, so they could listen to it and acquire it. And of course, their culture is closer. So, they like the same things. So they might like some music group, let's say they like heavy metal. So some of the groups are going to be English. So they're going to, be interested in the lyrics, be interested in their heroes or whatever icons.
What about on the flip side? Why aren't native speakers of English good at speaking foreign languages?
Well, that's a pretty complicated question as well. I mean,
well, what do you usually study in England? What is the second most common, most popular second language?
When I was at school, it was French.
French, yeah.
And these days, it's French or Spanish, I think. Although there's a lot more availability of what was considered exotic when I was, like Japanese and Chinese.
There's such close languages, yet Brits struggle with Spanish. And French, right? So why?
Again, it's a little bit. I think the idea of the island gives us separation.
What about the US with so many Spanish speakers in the country? I don't think that they speak good Spanish, most Americans.
No, that's true. I mean, well, it depends what you mean defined by American, but yeah,
born there. I mean, there are Spanish speakers at every corner, literally.
Yeah, and, I mean, you're talking about kind of like your stereotypical
white
Americans.
Yeah, not just white, even, I don't know, Asians and African Americans. I mean, all of them born there. I mean,
but I think if you look at the people who are born there, including Hispanic Americans, then I've got a feeling I might not be right, but I think they outnumber the English speakers. So
no, that's true. But my point is, like second language for people who
the kind of native English speaking Americans don't have very good Spanish. Yeah,
let's say second, third generation born in.
Why don't they? I don't know about Americans. I mean, I think you get this. Well, it's a combination of utility with the English. So it's the most useful language, so why learn something else? But also you get a kind of like a cultural kind of arrogance almost. Like, why would I learn something else?
About the definition of language. The reason I'm asking you because you have an MA in Applied Linguistics. Most people say that language is a tool for communication. Do you agree with that?
I suppose so, yeah.
To me,
yeah. What do you think?
To me, it's the exact opposite. Because communication means give information. So again, I ask you because you said they don't need, or the utility of it. Japanese people don't need, so to me, language is a tool for acquiring knowledge. That's the utility of language. Not the speaking, but the getting. Not the giving, but the getting.
Yeah, well, yeah.
And Japanese people have plenty of information in Japanese. That's what when people say don't need, they mean they don't need to speak it. But speaking is a byproduct of knowledge acquisition. Japanese people don't need to acquire knowledge, information in another language because they have plenty of it in Japanese. That's why they struggle with English. That's why you guys, native speakers of English, struggle with other languages, because English gives you the best quality information. Gives
everyone.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, that's been exaggerated over the last 20 years or so with the, proliferation of information on the internet.
Exactly.
I mean, I have many, many students who say, I say, why do you have much English? And they're like, if they're well educated, then generally they're like, because all the best research or the best information or the best manuals or whatever it is they do is in English. So I had to read it to, learn my trade.
Exactly. Exactly. Language is a tool for acquiring knowledge. And Japan, being the third biggest economy, they still produce a lot of knowledge, produce a lot of information. And people have this perception of Japan as this exporting giant, but I don't know if you know, 80% of the GDP is domestic consumption.
Yeah.
So most of the good quality stuff in terms of business, and especially business, is in Japanese. So this is the need. That's what I wanted to ask you, and because they spend so much money, and And again, about this teaching business, language teaching, I got kind of disillusioned with the whole thing because I don't think that language can be taught. What do you think?
Well, the disillusionment I can understand.
Because there is no knowledge in the language classroom. You see, people don't go to a language school to acquire knowledge. They go to acquire vocabulary. They go to basically learn how to speak, which is not possible because speaking is a byproduct of knowledge acquisition. To me, vocabulary and grammar are not knowledge. To me, vocabulary and grammar are to language what glossaries and footnotes are to a book.
I don't know. I like the analogy. It's kind of cool, but
imagine learning about marketing and all you do is read the glossaries at the end and the footnotes at the bottom, and then complain that you can't talk about marketing. I spent so much time learning all those words and phrases and stuff, but why can't I talk about marketing? Yeah, because there's no information. You didn't focus on the note. You see what I mean?
Yeah, but how do you think people acquire this information?
Reading and listening. That's how we learn our native language. Reading and listening. Reading, primarily reading. That's how we acquire knowledge. So what takes place in language classroom? What takes place in on platforms like this one? Tell me, please.
Well, yeah, I mean, to a certain extent, it's facilitating what you said. You know, you can, well, not the reading so much, depending on how you do things. But yeah, it's providing a platform for talking and listening, speaking and listening.
But for talking, to me, this is the hardest thing to explain or convince people, is that language is not for speaking. To me, this is an impossible task. You have one life. Don't waste it.